So I want to get into a conversation around margins a little bit. It's such a big part of what we talk about on the show. It's a big part of what you help contractors with. When you
Hmm.
work with a contractor for the first time, maybe what is that first step or first conversation that you have about margins?
Yeah, so the first step I have about margin is really about vision because I need to understand where the company is trying to go. Because we need margins to support that growth. And so are we trying to become a $10 million company, a $20 million company? Are we trying to offer benefits next year? Are we trying to hire a new, you know, project manager tomorrow? So it's just what what are we trying to do? And so they have to share that vision with me. And then once that vision is shared, then I can say, okay, what is your desired operating profit margin? Because that's going to be different for everybody. Um, no two construction companies that I know of have the same desired operating profit margin. And so once we identify what that is based on what your visions are for the company, now we can start to look at some real numbers. And so we need to create a baseline because we can't decide anything without having a baseline. And so my whole thing is if the books are not ready, let's get them ready. Let's see where you are today versus where you were yesterday. And then get a baseline. And then now we can say, okay, well, this is what the margin needs to be to just break even, and then we can talk about other things later. But let's first, getting you where you're at least covering your operating costs.
And when you have that first conversation and you finally, because it is a process to finally get the books in order. I know it's not like you have that first conversation, they give you a login and then it's good to go. But once you
Right.
do have those books in order and you know their numbers, um, do you find that people are surprised by their margin, or they're completely aware that they've got a good, they knew their margin was accurate and right and it's what they thought it was?
Hey guys, can we just jump back real quick and define margin? Because you've talked about what I would call a net profit margin, means bottom line, right, as a percentage of sales, and then there's gross profit margin. Could you maybe talk about those two things so they know
Yeah, sure. We'll start at that base
what
level.
we're being specific about? Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm talking about the net profit margin. That's after cost of goods has been paid, and after all expenses, operating expenses have been paid. And so what is that? What do you have left over?
Hey, and let me ask you, what do you typically see? Well, I mean, 2%, 5%, 10%, 20%.
I've been seeing somewhere around like 5%, like to be that average. And you I don't think no one's really trying to grow a huge company, on 5% profit margin.
Let's put that in perspective, because that means you sell $1 million worth of stuff and you wind up with a net profit of 50,000 before taxes, and you pay 40,000 or 40%, let's say. That might be a little high. So you got $30,000 left out of a
Right.
million. That's what that means.
That's what it
And that
means.
should make people mad.
Yeah.
Look how hard you work for $30,000. And what I used to say, if a box of fittings falls off a truck, you're in the hole.
Yeah.
You don't have enough to absorb any mistakes. Of course, mistakes never happen, right? Or cost overruns, or somebody who doesn't pay you, or to finance retainages for 3 years because that's how the guy contract you signed reads. So, but yeah, 5% basically we'd say, and I think we agree, is not acceptable.
It's not acceptable.
Yeah.
No.
First target for people I work with, and it's the first target, is 10.
Mm-hmm.
So you
Yeah.
sell a million, you got 100,000 on the bottom line, and there are people who do 20,
Yep. Yep.
and
And
they live different lives.
they definitely live their different lives. And these guys also understand cash is king. You need to have cash in the bank. I can't tell you how, I don't think there's been not one construction company that came to me with a savings account that had money in it. I have to say it because they may
Yeah,
have had a
because
savings account.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, but it didn't have any money in it, and that's a problem. And some of these guys live off of their loans and lines of credits, and that's another bad sign and bad indicator for me that we may be in a cash crunch, and we need to get out of it.
We had a guy I worked with 3 years ago. At the end of the year, he made $350,000 as a net profit. He had $750,000 of accounts receivable, and he had a bunch of inventory, but he didn't know what it was worth.
Oh man,
Yeah, he'd been around a while, but basically he was loaning out his bank loans to his customers as receivables. But it can be really tough.
Yeah, that can be tough because a lot of people don't understand loan payments come out of your profit margins. And so when you think of that, that's another thing that's kind of tanking your profit margin. Because if you take out $1 million loan, they may give you $1 million a day, and then you may use it on some project, or some other thing, and then it's financed for 20 years, 15, 20 years. But every time you make that payment, you're paying that out of your profit. Because you're saying that I'm taking this loan out because taking this loan out is actually going to yield me a higher profit margin. So that's the whole reason of me taking it out.
That's why.
Yeah, because I see that it's going to grant me this opportunity around the corner that I wouldn't have unless I had the cash, because I don't have the money to maybe mobilize up front or to buy materials, those type of things. But when you're just taking it out because times are hard, then that gets a little scary.
Yeah, I always like to talk about that fact that what you spent the loan for may be an expense, but paying it back is not. So
It's
our
not.
little example of somebody who makes 5% and pays taxes and has $30,000 left over, if they have $45,000 worth of loan payments over that same year,
Yeah,
cash, they're in the hole.
they're in the hole.
Yeah.
They're in the hole, and that's scary.